Things that will only happen once. In this day and age, when the world appears to have gone so far from what most would have expected to experience, it's a good idea to sit back and think a little about how lucky we are to be alive, how unlucky we could be, and just for the heck of it, why not think about some of the most special and rare things that have ever happened? That's today's topic. Things that are so rare, so astronomically unlikely, that they will probably only happen once. We might get to see a few miracles along the way too. Let's go. Thumbs up is off order. Subscribe, ring the notification bell, and share this video. A man cured of HIV. Okay, so technically this one has happened twice, but are you gonna have a problem with that when it's a matter of the lives of two people? That's a wonderful thing, but coincidences abound. Timothy Ray Brown, also known as the Berlin patient, has contracted HIV, a terrible thing to happen to a person. After having suffered from the virus for 11 years and taking the appropriate medication to diminish the virus's effect on his body in 2006, Brown found out that he had also been stricken with acute myeloid leukemia, a very nasty form of cancer that begins in the bone marrow. Despite the best efforts of medical science, the chemotherapy failed to cure Brown of this disease, and in 2007, after Brown had moved to Berlin, he received 2 bone marrow transplants over a year in an attempt to stamp out the cancer. Despite Brown having discontinued his antiviral therapy for HIV, his HIV levels did not increase. This is almost unheard of. Instead, though, the experts found only trace levels of HIV in his blood. That's more, the HIV that was in his blood was unable to replicate. Result: another man who lived through a similar situation is Adam Castillejo, a Venezuelan living in London for 20 years. Castillejo discovered that he had HIV in 2003 and described his reaction as that of receiving a death sentence, calling it a very terrifying and traumatic experience to go through. He too received a bone marrow transplant for lipoma, but the donor carried a mutation that hindered the ability of the HIV to enter cells. This means that the transplant replaced Castillejo's immune system with one resistant to the virus. This was treated as a one-off, but due to similarities with Brown's case, experts are galvanized to continue research. This one may happen again, and while we should hope no one suffers from either disease, perhaps a cure is on the way. Niagara Falls dries up. In 1848, the incredible tourist attraction that is Niagara Falls suddenly dried up. No water flowed over the Great Cataract for up to 40 hours, and people freaked out. They thought it was a sign that the end of the world was coming, but everyone thought that about everything back then. They went and prayed for salvation, but let's be real. What had happened? In truth, strong southwest gale force winds had pushed huge chunks of lake ice up to the far northeastern area of Lake Erie, which had blocked the lake's outlet into the head of the Niagara River. The response to this knowledge, even more tourism. Oh, and some smart entrepreneur decided to use this opportunity to blast some dangerous rocks from out of the way of future Maid of the Misters. Biracial twins. It really shouldn't be such a big deal when something like this happens. After all, it happens with animals all the time. Why not with humans? But perhaps because of the media's obsession with racial identity instead of personal identity, stories like this become big news. It's a very rare after all. Whitney Mayer is the 25-year-old mother of biracial twins Kalani and Jarani. Kalani was born with her mother's lighter complexion and blue eyes, while her frontal twin sister Jarani got her father's, Thomas Dean's, darker complexion. When the twins were born on April 23, 2016, Mayer and Dean were totally surprised to see the difference in skin color. They thought Kalani was an albino, but the color never came. It's very unusual and reminds us all to be like the couple who said, "We don't see color. Love is love." In these times of extreme racial sensitivity, these twins prove that just because there technically are such different colors that they belong to a different racial group, doesn't mean they aren't exactly the same. The 1 carat diamond. No, that's not a typo. This really happened in 2017. Mary Grams, a Canadian farmer, lost her engagement ring over a decade earlier. Despite searching everywhere on her hands and knees with her husband and crying many times, the ring never materialized. How heartbreaking. Finally, Grams resigned herself to the fact that she would never see her precious ring again until 13 years later, the ring showed up. And where was the ring? Wrapped around the misshapen carat that had grown through it. Grams realized quickly that she must have lost the precious heirloom while weeding the garden, and upon finding it, her husband identified the diamond as that which had once belonged to his mother. What a lovely thing to happen after such a long time. The world's most unlucky, luckiest man. Frane Selak is a Croatian man who has achieved a level of fame for his incredible luck, and yet lack thereof too. He has had 7 near-death experiences and ultimately came out on top. First, in 1962, Selak was riding a train through a cold and rainy canyon, and the train came off the tracks, crashing into a river. Someone pulled Selak to safety, but only he survived. He suffered hypothermia and a broken arm. 1 year later, Selak was flying on an airplane and the door malfunctioned. Selak was blown out through the doorway and fell, but landed in a haystack. The plane, however, crashed, and only Selak survived. 3 years later, in 1966, Selak was riding on a bus when the bus skidded, left the road, and crashed into a river, from which Selak was able to escape with only minimal damage, while other passengers drowned. It's always vehicles with this guy. Later, in 1970, his car, another vehicle, burst into flames and he was driving, but he managed to escape and flee the car before the fuel tank blew up. 3 years later, again and once again, while driving another vehicle, a malfunctioning fuel pump led to the engine of his car being doused with boiling oil and sheets of flame to come shooting through the air vents. Selak's hair was the only part of him that was burned, and he escaped once again. This guy shouldn't be allowed near wheels. In 1995, he was hit by a bus in Zagreb, but was only minorly injured, and in 1996, he managed to avoid a head-on collision with a United Nations truck on the curve of a mountain by swerving through a guardrail, leaping out, and grabbing a tree as his car plummeted. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, count them 7 near brushes with death. Oh, and by the way, 2 days after his 73rd birthday, Selak won over $1 million on the lottery and gave most of it to friends and family. What do you even say to that? I know what to say, and that is thank you very much for watching this video. Boy, those were some weird things that happened, huh? Maybe let's see some more sometime. In the meantime, please like this video if you enjoyed the world of random coincidences, and click subscribe in case you haven't yet. Finally, ring that bell for notifications, and remember, sharing is caring. Thanks for watching this video, and see you next time.